Our guest today has founded 5 cybersecurity companies, sold 4 of them, and is currently working on the 5th one right now. He's got so many experiences to draw from, and he talks about in this episode PLG, acquisition processes, the need for a security platform as a service, how he realized there was a need for a security platform as a service, why he still needs salespeople even though they have a PLG motion, and of course, his favorite spring pastime. Today's guest is Oliver Friedrichs, the founder and CEO of Pangea. Don't go away. Welcome to the Sales Bluebird podcast, where we help cybersecurity startups grow sales faster. I am your host, Andrew Monahan. Our guest today is Oliver Friedrichs, founder and CEO at Pangea. Oliver, welcome to Sales Bluebird.
Morning, Andrew. Great to meet with you.
Yeah, this is a good conversation I'm looking forward to. If only we found out beforehand that our paths crossed 20 plus years ago unknowingly, at least from my side, I'm sure from your side as well. And we'll go into that story in a second. So I'm keen to understand how our paths crossed 25 years ago and what you've been doing ever since. And obviously, you're the founder and CEO of Pangea right now. All right, let's go straight into your LinkedIn history, Oliver. And I'm not going to go through everything that's on there, but here's what I'm going to say. You, and correct me where I get this wrong, you are a 5-time founder now. You've sold the first 4 of those companies. So the first one went to, we call it McAfee. Back then it was called Network Associates. The second one to Symantec, the third one to SourceFire, and the 4th one to Splunk. So you got quite the history of building companies up to a certain level and then attracting, I guess, interest, partnership, and maybe acquisition interest from the bigger players in our industry. What I thought was kind of unique, though, was that a couple of things. One is, if I read it right in terms of your profile, you find the company, you grow it for 2, 3, 4 years, you get bought, and then you stay on at the acquiring company for a period of time, probably longer than any earnouts or retentions or things like that. Am I getting that right? And what's your thinking about staying so long?
Yeah, well, usually, they make it attractive to stay on and they want to retain the whole team and the company, including myself. And so, there's obviously an incentive for that. But also, I think in some cases, like at Symantec, stayed for, well over 6 years, right? Post, the earnout and the incentives. Simply because it was a fast growing company at the time in the early 2000s. A lot of interesting work to be done, a lot of interesting problems to be solved, a lot of technology to build. And it was just a great place to be. Similarly with Splunk, we stayed for 3 years and, really saw through the transition of our company Phantom into Splunk and really delivered on the promise that we made when they originally acquired the company. So there's, I think, an obligation, right, to deliver on the promise that you make and to continue to see your product through. And obviously an attachment to the product and the company and also the customers, who invested in you in the first place, right, to buy your product.
Yeah, and going back to the first one, so you find a Secure Networks, which was bought by Network Associates. I was there in May 1998. I was working as a sales rep in the UK. And you wake up in the morning, you get the email from, at the time it was Bill Larson, saying, we bought a company called Secure Networks, and here's what they do. And that was your company.
Yeah. Myself and my good friend Alfred Huger and Art Wong had started that company back in 1996, and we were literally in our early 20s, right? I had no idea what we were doing, but we knew a lot about security, and we built really one of the first and earliest network vulnerability assessment tools. Long before Tenable, Rapid7, and Qualys, now exist as more the web SaaS versions of those products. The only other main product was internet security systems at the time. And so we really built what I thought was like a technically, advanced version of a vulnerability tool, assessment tool at the time. Wrote 700 modules to look for vulnerabilities on computer networks, which was about the number that existed back then. Now it's, hundreds of thousands as you move 20 years later. Then McAfee came along in 1998 and was really rolling up a lot of different security companies at the time, and we were one of them. We're actually based in Canada, Calgary, Alberta, and they moved us down to Santa Clara, California.
Must have been an exciting time. This the first startup you did, and then you get bought and you get sucked into this big company. Which the McAfee Network Associates culture at the time was kind of interesting. I bet it was a little bit different to what you're used to up in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, it was look, this was the valley just right around the bubble, right? Where things were really out of control. I mean, everyone was so, the companies were going so fast, things were so overinflated that it was literally wild. There weren't as many controls in running a company back then, especially a public company, as there are today. So there were things that, today you can't get away with, right? And obviously, unfortunately, that's one of the things that caught McAfee and Network Associates back, in '99, 2000 as well. They made some mistakes, but it was a great place to be. Learned a lot and worked with great people. Gerhard Eschelbeck, who's a good friend, was running all of security products there. He later moved on to be the CTO at Qualys and then the CISO at Google. And has really evolved and grown with this security space as well. So had a great chance to work with him, and has become a good friend.
Yeah, I look forward. I look backwards at those times very fondly. I remember Gerhard well, and you're right. It was kind of the Wild West before Sarbanes Oxley, and rightly so. A lot of controls kind of came in place in the industry after that. Um, when you look back, you stayed on at these four companies. I'm interested. Which is your favorite one that you stayed on at?
Oh boy, I think probably the last one is the easiest answer. I think Splunk is just such a great company, and the welcome that the team rolled out for us when we joined was really unique in terms of like the I think warmth and warm welcome that they gave us when we joined. Uh, and Doug Merritt, the CEO, great leader there. Obviously was the decision maker and having us acquired. And Godfrey Sullivan, I was still on the board as well. He was the original CEO that took Splunk public. Another great individual and close friend. So the team there was really exceptional, and working with such a great team and giving us the ability to continue executing was and investing in the product was really unique. I'd say like that's so important when you get acquired that the acquirer sees that they need to essentially act as your next investor, and they can't just cut it off and start expecting the product to kind of sell off the shelves by itself. You need to keep investing and growing the go to market team and growing the product as well.
Yeah, you've had the experience of being in those shoes before, but I imagine maybe some of your team didn't, and you might be a bit apprehensive of being acquired into such a big company as Splunk.
Yeah, it's always interesting, right? Because like there's a lot of obviously I'm an older generation now, but as new people come in, there's always a lot of fear and uncertainty and not knowing where things are going to end up. So, setting a lot of those ground rules in the beginning during the acquisition process is really key so that, you know what you're getting into, you know what expectations are being met, and you know what the acquirer is going to commit to as well to make sure that you continue to be successful. Because, I would say that, yeah, I won't mention names, but some of the other acquisitions, uh, really didn't go that well. And, we were there for a year and then left, and quite honestly didn't even continue vesting because the company had issues, and it wasn't really a great place to be anymore. So yeah, so it varies, and you really want a mature leadership team that is on the acquiring side, that has done this before, that has acquired companies. When we joined Cisco, for example, we sold Immunet to SourceFire, and then SourceFire was acquired by Cisco. They have this down to uh, just a formula, right? They can rinse and repeat exactly how to bring people in. Very repeatable, very good process. Very, again, building a lot of trust along the way and treating people really well. And similarly, if they know that you may not be the right fit, they also treat you well because they want you to be happy on the way out if you're not going to be staying for long. So in that case, I stayed for a 6 month transition because there wasn't a clear role for me, and still was very happy with that. And they honored all of the agreements and all the responsibilities, and and the people who stayed, you did even better. But they had to commit to many more years of being at Cisco. So it's good on both sides.
Well, let's fast forward to October 2021. You decide to leave Splunk and start Pangea. Take us back to that moment when you were somewhere in the world with someone or some people saying, you know what, I think we're going to do another one.
Yeah, so we had been thinking about this idea for probably about a year, and the reason that so Sorb Satish, my co-founder, who's just an amazing engineering leader and CTO. Uh, when we built Phantom, the previous company, one of the things that we did is we connected to almost every API in the security space. So we connected to over 300 different security products and services to automate security operations because we essentially created a market called security orchestration, automation, and response, the source base. And so this was really the idea of wow, what if we flip that on its head and we actually delivered the entire world of security as a set of APIs for developers, not the SOC, not the enterprise, security team, but for the actual developers that are writing cloud applications so that they can embed security into their apps easily. And that hadn't really been done before. You can get some of these building blocks today. There's a variety of open source and a kind of a fragmented set of commercial offerings out there to be able to assemble security features, but we just saw it as a unique opportunity. When you look at companies like Stripe that did that for payments, right? If you want to embed payment processing into your cloud app, you go to Stripe. If you want to embed communications, you go to Twilio. If you want to leverage compute APIs, you go to AWS, GCP, or Azure. But nobody's done that for cybersecurity. So we saw it both as a challenge, a great opportunity, a big market with a lot of potential, and we had to go do it right now. That was like typically what happens is you come across this idea and you're thinking, why did nobody do this yet? Well, shoot, we have to do this right now, or else it's going to be too late.
So before Pangea, then, if I was a developer 3 years ago, what would I do if I had to integrate all this in?
Yeah, there's some things that were available. You'd probably go to Auth0 for authentication. You may have to grab some open source to write your role-based access control authorization layer. If you need secrets management, which every cloud needs, you either go to HashiCorp or Amazon Secrets Manager. If you need audit logging, you may have to build that on your own, right? With a Elasticsearch backend to store logs and then an interface to read those logs and view those logs. So you kind of had to assemble it from a bunch of open source and a set of individual vendors that have different pricing models, different procurement models, different delivery models, and it was really painful. Whereas we're really looking to consolidate that into one set of simple APIs for the developer with one pricing model.
So when people buy from you, Oliver, what's the main driver? Is it economics? Is it risk mitigation? They try and make things more simple. What are they trying to do?
Yeah, it's really a combination of all of those. For one, it's a single source for all of your security features. That's a trustworthy framework. So you know that you're getting secure code that you can embed with just a few lines of code out of the box. So for anyone who's in charge of application security, or if you're the CISO, you just want to make sure your developers are using a trustworthy framework like Pangea, right? So that you can sleep at night. Most developers don't know how to write security code, and that's one reason why we exist, to make developers uh, able to embed that out of the box with just a few lines of code. That's one driver. The economics are another one. So being able to easily access services like this with a pay-as-you-go model, the pricing model that AWS kind of created with their utility computing, where you're either paying a certain amount per compute hour, or a certain amount per storage, or a certain amount for database IO access, really revolutionized the data center. And if you look at security today, that doesn't quite exist, right? People are still paying large six-figure enterprise licenses for most of these security tools that are out there, even if they're needing to embed them into their cloud application. So the pricing model is also different and new, and it allows you to pay as you go, just like the AWS Stripe Twilio model as well. And reduced attack surface is another one, right? We're able to deliver a repeatable, reliable, trustworthy set of these services that are secure out of the box, so that you can sleep at night.
And is the buyer on the security side or on the development side?
It's mostly the development side. The security side, though, does get involved in terms of endorsing Pangea. So, for example, we may actually enter the organization sometimes through the security side and then end up talking to the CTO or the VP of engineering or the application security team or the engineering managers or directors, right, who are making the decisions on what code to use or what tools to embed.
And what are you seeing right now as the relationship between the security folks and dev folks? Are they on much better terms than they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Or
It is all over the place. I think every organization is different. Where sometimes security can actually dictate what's being used in some cases, but development historically, right, is resistant and has an allergic reaction to anything that's forced on them. So I think there's a dynamic that's still evolving in this case. But look, the reality is development does need security in their app, and they need to get it easily. And their engineers typically don't know how to write security code. So inevitably, right, there's a forcing function where you need to be compliant, you need to be secure, you need to get your product to market faster. Your engineers should probably be writing code that is relevant to your business, not focusing on the core security plumbing.
and when I look at your website, nice website by the way, very clear about what you do. There was no mystery. Sometimes there's mystery looking at vendors' websites about exactly what they do. Yours is very clear. When I look at it, there's a couple of like breadcrumbs around maybe your go to market. One is you actually have pricing on your pricing page as opposed to call sales, and you have sign up things like that. That to me says you're probably doing a PLG type motion. Did I get that right?
That's right. Yeah, we've really tried to make it dead simple to get on board where anyone can sign up for free, get started, you get credits to start using services and APIs out of the box, and you can plug it in and make sure that they work for you. So the entire process is super streamlined, just like you would find with the major cloud providers, payments like Twilio, Stripe, and so on as well.
I noticed on LinkedIn for the company, you do have people in sales. You have a VP of sales and some others there as well. How do you think about matching that up between the PLG motion and I guess either a sales led motion or at least salespeople involved?
Yeah, look, inevitably, when you look at companies that are PLG led, they still have a sales organization, right? And I think that's when things really start to scale because when you have large enterprise customers, they ultimately are buying, large volumes of these services. They're not paying with a credit card. They're not using the kind of entry level PLG version of products in many cases. So they ultimately want to have more of an enterprise arrangement, enterprise agreement in place to be able to not only get a discount, but also have a more predictable uh, consumption model, right? That they know how much they're going to use, they can pay in advance, and then have that um, provisioned for them and dedicated to them. So there's a number of areas where eventually customers grow into the size and use where they evolve to more of an enterprise agreement. And so that's where you start having more of a traditional top-down model. We're still very, very early in that phase at the moment.
Yeah, I noticed that AWS is always held up as the company that have the right sort of pricing model and more flexible and things like that. If you go to their LinkedIn page, it says they got 120,000 employees and 17,600 in sales. So, so that's a large sales team selling something that apparently you don't need salespeople for.
Yeah, it's massive. I mean, my experiences, look at the companies I've worked post acquisition, right? We've always worked directly with an Amazon salesperson to kind of negotiate discounts and favored rates to be able to continue growing and have that kind of dedicated, not only dedicated resources, provisioned for us, but also have that more predictable pricing model. The risk that a lot of people have is like with a credit card, you can just keep growing and growing and it's there's no cap or really limit to the amount that you can use, just like, kids buying, stuff on Amazon with their mom's account or cell phone usage and so on.
Yeah, no, yeah, I get it. certainty is what people are after at that point, right? So there's some predictability about what their spend is going to be. Um, I'm going to contrast two things here, Oliver, with you. If you go back to the secure networks days in 96, 97, 98, I don't know how many cybersecurity companies there were, but let's say, I don't know, 50, 100, something like that. Not many. These days, right now, there's about 3,300 vendors in cybersecurity. How do you think about trying to get your fair or unfair share of attention in the marketplace and get noticed by the right people?
Yeah, it's tough, right? There's a lot of noise. There's so many companies. It's hard to distinguish yourself. In our case, we really see it as a new category. We're calling it security platform as a service. So when you think of other PaaS providers, platform as a service, obviously Amazon, GCP, and Azure are PaaS, platform as a service. When you look at Stripe, it's payments as a service. When you look at Twilio, it's communication platform as a service. So security platform as a service is pretty new and unique. And that's already garnered quite a bit of attention in the market. So for example, we're one of the finalists with the RSA Innovation Sandbox, presenting on April 24th at RSA in San Francisco. The 10 most innovative companies were selected for that to compete and present for 3 minutes in front of the audience. So we were, somewhat already recognized by the judges for being new, innovative, and someone that they, feel could really make a difference in the space. So it's a lot of times what you're building, right, has to be something that's somewhat new, not just evolutionary, but revolutionary. And I think that makes a big difference. Whether or not that's what we are, we'll see. I think we believe that obviously this is different and also much needed. And the reason is that we're expecting almost 1 million software companies by 2027 and 29 million software developers by 2024, which is a massive number. So the more that we can equip these developers to be able to secure their code and deliver secure cloud applications, that actually solves the problem all the way down the development lifecycle to the right, where you're deploying enterprise products to protect against all this poorly written software, right? What if we solve the actual poorly written software first? So we're actually shifting left of left. Like when you look at companies like Sneak and other static and dynamic source code analysis products that are out there, they're left. They're obviously trying to protect the code as it's delivered. We're trying to actually give you secure code out of the box, and that's again kind of new. That hasn't really been done before.
Yeah, it seems like you're completely reframing the problem, or I guess a solution to the problem by doing it that way around. You think what you need is some better analysis tools, but really what you need is a tried and true and easy way to integrate all this in, right?
Right. Yeah.
Oliver, before we go into the sales side, let's get to know a bit more about you. If you can give me three numbers randomly between 1 and 35, I'll read out the corresponding question.
Let's see. 7, 13, 22, 22.
7 is, what is your favorite spring pastime?
Wow. That's a good question. I think, it depends on the weather, probably. Either skiing or golfing or boating probably are three options. These days, you don't even know what you're going to get. In California, it could be a blizzard or it could be a drought or heat wave. So it varies.
That's great. Yeah, it could be anything, right? And you're covering everything there as well. If it's snowing, you can head up to the Sierra Nevada. If it's nicer, you can go boating or play golf as well. That's awesome. What was the next number you said?
What was it? 13, I think.
13. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Do you have a dog right now?
I do. Yeah. Her name's Phoenix. She's a Cavapoo and just really, really cute little dog. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got two, one of which is a Cavapoo, actually. 3 or 4 years ago, my daughter got obsessed by them, and we relented in a moment of weakness to get the second dog. And it turned out great, though. What a great little dog she is. And what was the last number between 1 and 35?
22.
22. Okay. Tricked out Jeep or German car with all the gadgets?
Oh, can I say both?
Does it depend on the season?
I mean, it's yeah, pretty much. I've got a great Jeep and and a German car as well. So it's Yeah, I think it's a great combination. It depends on the weather, depends on the season. If you're up in the snow in Tahoe, for example, you need an all-terrain vehicle with good tires, or else you're going to end up in the ditch. So that's definitely the place for a Jeep.
Yeah, I live in Colorado, so we have it the same way, right? You need a certain vehicle for some things you do up there in the mountains, and sometimes down in Denver, you need something bit different. Tell me about the day that you won your first customer at Pangea.
Well, we really went GA back in December, or end of November, November 30th. And so a lot of our users are just ramping. We're about 3 months into the actual user growth side of things. Uh, it was just really exciting to see a user that embedded our first API into their app. And the first application that we really delivered was our secure audit log service, which is a tamper-proof, cryptographically verifiable audit trail that you can plug in to your cloud application to handle logging of important events like login, logout events, financial transactions that you want to guarantee have not been tampered with. And yeah, the first time someone used it, it was just a great feeling because it was validation that, hey, this is actually real. Someone's using it. We didn't actually go and recruit them, right? It wasn't a top down motion, it was a bottoms up motion. Someone we had never talked to before discovered us and decided to plug us in. And so that was just, I think the whole office really, celebrated and cheered that. And that, slowly continues to grow and expand. I'd say we're still early in the adoption side. By the end of this year, we expect to have 24 services out, which will really complete the framework, and that's when we believe things will really start to accelerate.
24 services seems like a lot. That must give you quite a wide capability for your customers.
Yeah, it is a lot, and in fact, we're mixing that with services that we build organically, like authentication, authorization, audit logging, secrets management, securely storing files, scanning files for malware, and then partner delivered services. We've partnered with CrowdStrike to deliver their threat intelligence to our customers as well. Similarly with the pay as you go model. So for, sub 1 penny per API call, you can get the best threat intelligence in the world from CrowdStrike versus having to go to them to pay six figures if you're a large enterprise. So it makes that data available to developers. Similarly, our partner Reversing Labs gives us file reputation data so that we can also look at over 25 billion files that they've collected and categorized over the internet to detect malware and other malicious files out of the box. We have partnership with domain tools to do domain reputation delivery as well. So if you want to look up a domain name to see if it's malicious, they categorize 390 million domain names. And we have a number of other partners that are continuing to launch. We just launched one called Digital Element, formerly Digital Envoy, which gives geolocation data for an IP address, very, very accurate down to the city and physical latitude, longitude location of that user. In addition to knowing if a user is coming from a VPN, a Tor proxy, or another potentially malicious source. So these partnerships allow us to deliver enterprise grade intelligence at a with a model that's a pay as you go model via API only, built for developers.
I imagine they also give you a capability scale that would be hard to fund yourself, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't even want to build those services, right? Like, that'd be beating your head against a wall to try to build a better threat intel than CrowdStrike that's monitoring 20 million plus endpoints around the world.
What was the moment in the scaling on the customer side that you said, you know what, we actually do need to have someone who's a salesperson or a top down motion going as well? Did you get overloaded with people asking for agreements, or did something happen where they said, oh, we got to do this differently now?
Yeah, that's a good question. We actually started earlier than that, simply because our knowledge of PLG historically. One of my board members, Subar Samian, great cybersecurity leader, also with experience having been on the board of Auth0, another PLG company, and Segment. Auth0 was bought by Okta. Segment was another PLG company bought by Twilio. In both of those cases, they didn't start seeing a traction until they started the enterprise sales, you know, motion as well. And so in our case, we just started really early and wanted that person, Eric Rogers, great individual, joined us from Transmit Security, was previously with us at Splunk and Phantom as well, to just start learning. And so he's really in learning mode right now and getting ready, right, as the usage and consumption starts to grow.
And I imagine then he knew from the previous lives he had with you about that learning mode versus selling mode. Because I think that's tough for people. If you've been a salesperson for a period of time and then you're told really your role right now is to learn, it feels weird that you're not actually out there with a quota trying to sell something immediately.
Yeah, you really need the right individual. It's got to be someone who's got the EQ, I think, to be able to like look at the needs up front on what's ultimately required down the road. Like when he does become, build the broader sales team. So I do believe that it comes down to the person. You couldn't really just drop any regional sales manager into that role and expect them to help figure that out.
No, that'd be difficult. When you get when Eric's ready to hire more people, what sort of people do you look for in that second wave?
I think we're still working on it, to be honest. In most cases, because of the technical nature of the product we're selling to developers, that there has to be a real strong technical aptitude in the individual to be able to understand the various services that we're working with and selling. So I would say the profile is definitely different than your typical enterprise security software sales rep. And we have yet to work out what that looks like.
Yeah, it is a lot more technical, right? You're dealing with people that are going to have demands. It might be lower on the sales side and more on the kind of developer relations or SE side, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oliver, let's flip things around a little bit. Do you have a question for me about go-to-market side, selling, getting attention out there that you want me to see if I can give you an answer for?
Yeah, I guess one of my questions is, at the early stages, if you've experienced product-led growth, what was the most effective way to get a new company in front of that developer product audience?
I want to refer to a couple of companies that I've talked to in the last year or so. The first one was, I think they're now called Run Zero. Used to be called Rumble.Run. I spoke with Jay Wallace, who's the VP of sales over there. And what was interesting for them is he said that, well, they got HD Moore is their founder, or one of their founders, who's a well-known kind of white hat person in the industry, has a large following. So as they were coming to market, just through his followers, I guess, on Twitter or wherever he was, they started to get a lot of inbound coming from that. And then what would happen to them was they quickly got overrun with him, and then they moved on and hired a CEO, and the CEO got overrun with the inbound, and that was the impetus to get over to the you have a sales team handling the inbound, but also covering some top down as well. So the interesting thing about that was they had someone with a large following. Now, not everyone has a founder like that, but you can get people like that, right? Cylance, for example, I remember they hired Malcolm Harkins in, CISO at Intel, went to Cylance, and then he was in the community, as it were. So, you may be way ahead of me on this, but maybe there's someone uh, with that same sort of profile, either in the security development community or in the security community, that might be the ideal person to have as like the evangelist kind of CISO to bring them in, and who has that following that they can easily reach for you. So that's one thought. And then the second thought, which is a little bit obvious, but I've talked to a couple of companies who are part of the shift left movement right now, and they're very, very much over indexing on two things. One is content, content first for developers, just everything that they need, get out there, both from a practical standpoint about integrating things, but also from a kind of evangelist standpoint as well. And then going out to every which place that they hang out on the developer side, conferences, groups, communities, wherever it might be, and making sure that they're part of that group. So that there's that element of when I think about security, I want you to think about us, right? I think that second one's probably a pretty obvious one that you've already tackled or about to. But I often think about the first one is the advantage of having someone who already has that large awareness about them. It's actually quite a powerful thing to use, I think, these days.
Great. Yeah, totally agree. Both of those are absolutely needed.
Yeah. Well, listen, Oliver, I've loved this conversation. As you said, you're a finalist in the RSA Innovation Sandbox competition, which, by the way, is quite an achievement. I mean, as I understand it, there's literally hundreds of companies that apply. I've heard numbers up to or as near 1,000, and then the panelists have to kind of filter through them all and select just 10, which in itself must be a tough thing to do. And you've been selected for that. And as you say, I think the Monday of RSA, you have to present in front of the panel, but also I think a reasonable sized audience as well. Must be an exciting time.
Yeah, it's definitely is, and to be recognized by that group of judges, they're all very accomplished themselves in the industry and have been in it for many, many years. And so that's a great recognition. And yeah, we'll wish us luck.
Wish you every bit of luck for that. Really, I do.
Yeah.
That's a heck of an achievement so far. Just to get in the final, and then good luck with the actual events on the day. If someone wants to get in touch with you, Oliver, to continue the conversation or even talk about maybe joining you over there at Pangea, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, well, my email is Oliver at Pangea, Pangea.cloud. Welcome to reach out to me, or find me on LinkedIn.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I wish you every success for the Innovation Sandbox, for RSA itself, for 2023 and beyond. It was fun chatting with you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Well, that was a fun discussion with Oliver. Clearly, he's someone who's got a passion for solving cybersecurity problems by starting companies in cybersecurity and working through to find solutions that people find valuable. Such a rich history and so many experiences that he drew on, or he's drawing on, I guess, for his fifth at Pangea. A few takeaways from me. The first one was when I asked him the question about standing out, one of the things that he did was he talked about the need to create a new category around security platform as a service. I think in the world of differentiation, some people shy away from the idea of creating a new category because it's not easy. But if you are able to do it, the effects of being able to do it are far-reaching. Doing a category creation process as opposed to just being in the market and trying to be a little bit different can make a big impact on the success of your company. And he was thinking about that as a way to stand out, the way to differentiate so well in a very, very crowded marketplace. So the need to create a category was takeaway number one. The second one was when we were talking about the go-to-market side. Even though PLG is where they started, what he saw from his experience, I guess, was that there's a need to have a top-down and a bottom-up approach. These companies, larger companies, want to have agreements in place, both from a good kind of hygiene perspective of having, working with companies and making sure there's a governing agreement that they work off that they're happy with and have negotiated, but also around negotiating price in terms of, having some certainty around what the price is going to be. One of the big hits around AWS has been that in many cases, the costs go out of control very quickly when you're on consumption-based pricing. So thinking about constructing agreements that are very rewarding for the vendor that's selling the as a service offering, but also one where procurement departments and also budget holders feel comfortable that they've got some knowledge and some certainty about what their price is going to be or their spend is going to be, clearly is where having an approach where there's hand-holding and involvement from sales is important. Thirdly, the takeaway I had was that it was at Phantom, i.e. his previous startup, where he recognized the need for what they're doing right now at Pangea. So while I was at Phantom, they had to go and build some stuff that they wished they could buy off the shelf or get from somewhere else. And after they got acquired by Splunk and been there a while, that's when they felt the itch to go and solve that problem. So it was interesting, looking at previous situations, previous lives of things where that was a challenge. There must be a better way can sometimes drive the need for someone to go and start a company to go solve that. So it was a fun conversation for me with Oliver. Clearly, we got a connection going way back that we didn't really know about, but some shared experiences going back 25 years now. And great ideas and thoughts from Oliver on what he's doing right now at Pangea. And I wish him and the team every success for the Innovation Sandbox but also for the rest of the year into next year as well.